Good evening and welcome to The Caring View, the online social care chat show exclusively to YouTube. Tonight is a topic that I think we are all heavily invested in. It's part of the reason that we've got together, we've created this chat show, and it's about recognition of people working in the social care sector. Before we get started, all the views expressed tonight are of our own individuals and not of the companies that we work for. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you are notified every time that we go live and upload new episodes. So, what a week! What do we think? Matt Hancock? Anyone? Come on.
Go on. I think we all know the answer to that one, don't we? I think there isn't really words to describe it. I mean, we all know what happened last year in regards to PPE, testing, ring fence, golden steel, whatever barriers there were around care homes. Oh, it was just, I've got to admit, I didn't listen to it. I didn't really follow it because I just thought it's just going to wind me up. So I didn't. I looked through, scrolled through it in the evening and had a look through it. But yeah, it's we all know what really happened, don't we?
I mean, I was sat there with all my evidence and I was listening to it going, well, that doesn't matter and that doesn't ring true. And he sat there going, and everyone had testing in July. And I was like, do we not remember the 2nd of August last year when they were abandoning whole home testing and then promised us Lamport tests, which no one ever got and still don't have unless you work for the NHS. And no one really got whole home testing until September. And yet it's all just under the rug. And, you know, I'm annoyed that he's getting away with it. I am. But I'm more annoyed that this is going to be like double jeopardy now. And all those people wanting answers, all those people wanting the apology from government, probably will never get it now. That's done. Cummings is fired his shots because he wanted a bit of revenge. And the government have gone and covered everything up. Mark?
Well, I'm like Donna. I didn't really watch it, if I'm honest. I don't know. I'm just bored of listening to Matt Hancock tell lie after lie. And I don't know. I started watching it and then it just frustrated me because I knew I think it was in the first, 5 minutes that he'd already told one lie. And I just thought, I can't watch it. But yes, I tuned out. But I did follow, obviously, on Twitter. It was very active. So I just kept up to date with, I know you were tweeting about it and the BBC were tweeting. So, yeah, I just followed your updates.
Mine were probably a bit too biased, if I'm afraid. It was like, Matt Hancock said this. What a liar! But, I wasn't that professional about it. Dawn, yeah, and, we all know of your anger and frustration about this topic. So what was your response from the other day?
Well, I watched the entire thing. Well, I watched most of it and then listened to the rest of it in the car. And it is like a car crash. Listening to him tell lie after lie after lie, or embellishing on what he said or what he didn't say. Actually, what I said was this, or what I said was that. I become really frustrated to the extent where you're then questioning yourself as to what you were determining at that time. So in the end, I stopped tweeting.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it was frustrating the fact that we were sat there thinking, maybe we are wrong. Maybe we did misinterpret everything last year. And, when you go back and look at all your own tweets and his tweets, especially, one of my favourites was from the beginning of the year when he was talking about the social care reform and about how social care is going to have a proper voice moving forwards. And then when he was sat down giving evidence, he was like, well, actually, this time last year, I didn't have much of a say in social care. And it's actually all down to the local governments. And well, come on. If you kick a ball and break a window, own up to it. Stop passing the buck.
The best bit is he's never even been anywhere near a care home. He has not got the foggiest how social care works. I mean, I'd be really intrigued to know about, I don't know, his family, his parents, whatever, if he's ever had any contact with social care. But certainly how he comes across, Matt Hancock, come on, please come to our care homes. You are more than welcome. Definitely. We'll show you around. We'll show you how one of them works because you really do not know.
And we all lobbied last year, didn't we? We all lobbied to get his attention. Heck, I was on Good Morning Britain just before him. And Susanna Reid was even like, get in touch with Adam. He'll show you how it's done. Just talk to him and he'll tell you what to do. You know, and they don't. Head in the sand. We'll pretend that we know what's going on. We'll make decisions about them without them, and we'll just continue as we go. Enough negativity, because also this week was an absolute landmark for social care in the Queen's birthday celebrations. I think more people than ever have been recognised who work in the social care sector. Slightly ironic, seeing as we only got 9 words in the Queen's speech, but nevertheless, still fantastic people being recognised. One of those brilliant people who were recognised is joining us tonight, and we'll introduce you to her shortly. But also this week, we also have some changes to guidance. So things are a little less draconian now. Things are a little bit more open. Donna, do you want to give us a rundown?
Yeah, so despite the fact that obviously the opening up of everything on the 21st of June has been obviously delayed by 4 weeks to the 18th of July, which I've got to admit I fully agree with the Delta variant being about. I do think we need to get on top of the vaccines. So on that note, it has been announced that it is going to now be open by the end of the week for all over 18s to go and be vaccinated. It was only a couple of weeks ago that we were in the 30s, so we've now head right down to 18. So that's absolutely brilliant. And I already know of a lot of people of that age who have already been invited. There's now, walk-in and open vaccination centres. So the one thing I really cannot fault the government for is the vaccination programme. I think they are doing absolutely fantastic with it. And before we know it, it's going to be September. And hopefully those of us who've, started and were double vaccinated, that we're going to be, offered a booster as well. But we've also obviously had the good news, because obviously visits were allowed out of care homes. But there was this big, huge debate, because once somebody went out just for a lovely trip to the park, on return to the care home, they had to isolate for 14 days. Basically, not much point going out if that's what you then have to do when you come back. So that has now been abolished, although they are still saying for some high risk visits outside the home, and definitely if a resident has to go into hospital and has to stay overnight, they are still saying about 14-day isolation. Personally, I feel with good testing on return to the care home, that is not necessary at all. But it's good news in general. And then also we've had the announcement that overnight stays are possible, and that is really good news, particularly for those care homes with the younger physically disabled and learning disabilities, because that was a massive thing for those. They used to go back to their parents' house at least once a week, even more than that, and stay overnight, and that's really important for families to keep together like that. So that's fantastic news as well. So we are still definitely moving in the right direction. I do want to mention quickly, and Hayley in the chat box has actually just brought up, how do we feel about the Budapest Game with no social distancing and no face masks? Now, I'll be perfectly honest, my husband-to-be is sat 2 rooms away watching the football tonight rather than watching me. But can I please say thank you very much to anybody who is watching us tonight instead of the football. I do believe that it's England's second game tonight. How do I feel about the football? I don't know. I've got mixed views, really. I do think that we need to be getting back to some kind of normality. And I do know that there's been a lot of events taking place that we're not aware of. There's been a lot of testing going on, a lot of things, everything. But yes, when you see crowds on television who aren't social distance and aren't wearing face masks, how it makes me feel is, then why are we still having to do it, I suppose? That's how it makes you feel. So I'm not saying that they're not doing testing. We don't really know how it works. Do they have to do PCRs or LFTs before they go to these football matches? I've no idea. But I think from a general public point of view, it feels a little bit disappointing that obviously, we've been stepped back 4 weeks and then we're seeing kind of things like that. So it's very much conflicting. And I think that's what adds to people being a bit confused at times. What can we do? What are we meant to be doing? Because I'm seeing this and then I'm seeing that. And yeah, I think a lot of mixed messages coming across to people, which doesn't help.
Especially when the data shows that it's actually the younger generations being affected most by the Delta variant and not the older generations. So, if you're going to open up for the younger generations, at least open up for the older ones. Dawn, Mark, quickly, before we introduce our guests, your views on this week's news.
I think the isolation guidance and things doesn't really change anything for us, because we've been encouraging our families to come and pick up our residents for months, probably since February time. So it hasn't really made much of a difference. The hospital isolation, well, we're quite lucky in Norfolk at the moment, because they're doing PCRs before people are discharged. We then do a PCR, and then we're also doing lateral flows. So coming from a complex dementia care home, it is really difficult to isolate people. So our priority is that hospital PCR before they're discharged. So it's not really making much of a difference to us, to be quite honest.
And Mark, being a regional, obviously, for domiciliary, this is different now, but I'm sure you've got views on what's been announced.
Yeah, I think for me, I've spoken to a number of parents of, who have got children in care homes or young adults in care homes with learning disabilities. And a lot of the homes have told them that regardless of it, they still won't be able to have overnight stays because of the risk to other residents. So I think it just goes back to what we've said the whole way through, that it's still guidance. So it's still open to interpretation from individual providers. And I think, like Donna said earlier, for the learning disability sector and for those residents in learning disability homes, this would have been a humongous, bit of guidance that really could have opened the doors and given them some kind of quality of life that they would have had before the pandemic. And it's a shame that providers are already jumping on it, saying that they're not going to do it, they're not going to entertain it. And it does worry me how many people living in care homes would have seen that on the news, would have heard that, their parents might have told them, oh, this is great, and then the care homes are saying no. I think the only other bit of news that we missed was the CQC announced, didn't they, this week, that they're going to list all the care home deaths per individual care home, which does worry me about the impact on social care, especially for care homes, given that, we've really only just got back up on our knees after the last blow of bad press and media. So, yeah.
Especially because only 1.6% were caused by hospital outbreaks, even though we weren't testing people, so we don't really know. But yeah, no, I completely agree, Mark. It's going to be a difficult couple of months, I think, for the entire sector. So where you can, shove that green heart for social care on your Twitter, on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, and let's start celebrating social care. Right, down to tonight. We are overjoyed to have two fabulous guests with us tonight. One is a carer from Castleford Nursing Home. I did a COVID care story with her boss, Ben Miller, a few months back, so we're delighted to welcome Jess with us. And we have also got Caroline Abrams, the charity director of Age UK and recent recipient of a CBE. Welcome, both of you. How are you both?
Hello.
So, Caroline, how does it feel? Tell us, come on.
It's nice. It's very nice to be recognised by your peers, isn't it? I think it's something we all like, really, whoever we are. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a great fan of the honours system, to be honest. I did think quite hard about whether to accept it. But yeah, it's very nice, and I decided to accept it. I'm not going to go collect it; they can post it. But it's something to have. So, and people have been very kind, and I've been inundated by lots of emails and cards and tweets and so forth. So yeah, I didn't get it for social care. I think it's important I should say that. I got it for services to the voluntary sector and to older people during the pandemic. So, I'm really interested in social care, because it's such a big deal for older people. But that's the way round. That's why I'm very interested in it. I don't see myself really as a social care leader, for example, like some other people do that I work with. But, absolutely behind everything you guys are trying to do, and I'm very grateful on behalf of older people for all you guys do and have continued to do right through the pandemic, and lots, I'm sure, of the people watching tonight as well. You've had such a rough time, and we're so sorry, but we're also incredibly grateful for your, you've stuck with it. I bet you're really tired now, and I hope you're going to get a bit of a break over the summer. I think we have to enjoy this good weather while we've got it, because I'm not sure that the winter's going to be all that easy either, just as Adam was saying, really.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Caroline. I'll just say, if you want to save Buckingham Palace, any postage, Dawn will be more than willing to go and collect it for you and personally deliver it.
Definitely do that. I was going to ask if you needed a +1, because I have a hat.
I did get a very.
I'm surprised Queenie's not in the background for you tonight, Dawn.
I was going to do that, and then I thought, no, that might be a little bit over the top. But if I had one and she had pinned it on me, I'd wear it all the time like a little brooch. I'd never take it off.
Well, much different to Matt Hancock and his care badge, and that's all I'm going to say on that. So,
Yeah.
Jess, welcome. Nice to meet you. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm Jess. I'm originally from Bristol. I now live in Chepstow, which we've now been here for about 2 years. I work at Castleville House Care Home, and we specialise in dementia care. I've worked there for coming up to a year now, but I've worked in care on and off about 10 years. Anything from care of the elderly. I've done renal, I've done A&E, and I've also worked in gynae. So I've worked in a variety of different areas, and I've seen a variety of different things over my time.
Amazing. I mean, an eclectic resume there, an eclectic resume.
Yeah.
More than qualified to join us tonight to discuss the recognition of the workforce. So, prior to this evening, we did run a public poll just to see what the public's perception of the recognition of the social care workforce is. You know, we can happily sit here and say we are not recognised enough, but if the public think we are, they think we are. So I'll pull the poll up and we can have a bit of discussion on that. Sorry, that's my experienced shock face. I've been practicing it all evening. No, the majority of people do not think the workforce in social care get the recognition they deserve. I'm going to open it up. Mark, what do you think?
It doesn't surprise me, but in a way, I thought there would be more than 2% that would have said that they thought that we were valued. And the only reason I say that is because I think when there was a survey done, and I can't remember who did it, I think it was the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, that looked at social care. The majority of members of the public thought you had to have a qualification to work in social care. So it surprises me that members of the public don't think that it's viewed in that way. I would have thought it would have been higher. But I think if we've got people that work in social care that have done the poll, I can definitely see why there's more people that have said no, because I think when you work in the sector, you definitely don't feel valued.
Yeah. Caroline, as an outsider, you say you're heavily invested in social care, but didn't get your CVE for recognition of work in social care. What do you think about the recognition of people working in the sector?
Yeah, like you, I wasn't really surprised. I guess you wonder a bit about the 2%. Or maybe it was a typo. Maybe they pressed the wrong button. I don't know. It's kind of my kind of poll because there's no doubt about it. It's a very, very clear result, isn't it? And I think we know that during the pandemic, the profile of what the people who work in social care do was raised. So a lot more people thought about it than perhaps had ever thought about it before. Admittedly, very much about the care homes, a bit less awareness, I think, about care for people in their own homes. But I think there's a lot of sympathy, actually, a lot of public sympathy and support for people working in social care, even if it doesn't always feel like that.
I completely agree. We had the clap last year, didn't we? People were clapping for us. Jess, obviously you've been in social care a while now. Yeah. Have you noticed the difference pre and post pandemic in the recognition?
Yeah, I have. Definitely. Like before pandemic, people didn't really understand what carers did. That's why with that poll, it kind of really shocked me, to be honest, because I thought it'd be higher and people would think a lot more of carers, to be honest. And they would think they are a lot more, respected. And now people, because obviously they did the every week, they did the clap-in, and they were appreciating them. And that makes you realise it's only taken to have the pandemic, that people are starting to actually take care staff for granted.
Yeah.
Did you not feel though, Jess? Because just going back to the clap, I'm sorry, but this is really my kind of sort of stickling point, that when it started, clap for carers didn't feel that it was for social care. It felt very much that it was for the NHS. It was all about, and I don't mention the word rainbows because Adam will go off on a tangent, but it was all the rainbows in the windows with the NHS. People got the blue flags up. Everybody was, thank you NHS, thank you NHS. And I've got to admit, at the very beginning, I refused to go out and clap on that Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I think it was, because I was like, hang on a minute, who's clapping for us? Who's clapping for us, you know? And I got really quite passionate about it. But then I did, because I thought, no, I am going to go and clap for us. I know who I'm clapping for. But it did very, very much feel at the beginning of it that it wasn't for social care. You know, I mean, did you feel that as well?
I did as well. And we can't forget, like, we were forgotten about for so long. It was all you ever heard was NHS staff, you know. What about social care workers? We are the ones out there, you know. We had no PPE, remember, for so long. They didn't even supply PPE. So we were out there risking our lives, risking our families' lives, and doing everything I can. And to them, especially to Matt Hancock, we weren't their priority, which, you know, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair at all.
No.
Now, Dawn, you know, unfortunately were affected quite badly with COVID in your homes. The clap, pass an opinion. Let us know how you feel about that.
See, I love the clap. We used to get all the staff. We've got this big reception. They'd all socially distance. We'd all be clapping, and we'd be clapping each other. And I used to stay on a Thursday night, and we'd all be there clapping. I would take videos and pictures of everybody, and we did it for us to get us through. And everybody then, you'd find, come Tuesday, everybody was talking about Thursday night. So we'd even have residents out the front clapping, and they'd be clapping the staff. So I loved it on that basis. I did become frustrated when people would say, well, no, I'm outside clapping for the NHS, or like my neighbours would say, oh, I didn't realise you were a nurse. I didn't realise you worked in the NHS. Well, no, I don't. Actually, I work in social care, and that's why we're clapping. So, yeah, I loved it, but I loved it on that basis.
For me, the whole process was finite, because I think it was not 2 weeks after the final clap on our doorsteps, Boris Johnson stood in Parliament and pretty much blamed the social care sector for the care home crisis and deaths. So, you know, 2 weeks it was, way, social care. And the next thing was, well, no, social care really are to blame for what's been going on here. So I felt like it was short-lived, and overnight we became vilified. Then we became heroes again. And then the whole vaccine conversation came around, and, you know, carers were vilified once again. So I do think there needs to be a commitment to the recognition for social care. And I am glad you brought up the rainbow, because it is Pride Month right now. We are in Pride Month, celebrating and recognising everybody in the LGBTQIA community, including myself. So I will say, the sooner we reclaim the rainbow, the better. And that's all I'm going to say on that. It sticks in my throat. It sticks in my throat. Anyway. Sorry. Donna.
Yeah, Jess, I just kind of sort of want to ask you, because we've spoke as the four of us as kind of managers. We first of all, on our very, very first show, we spoke about our experiences of COVID, and then on our mental health, we spoke very much about kind of sort of how we felt. But I think it's really important to hear about you, because yes, you know, you could say we were all on the front line, but we were very much involved in making the decisions, literally trudging through that thick mud called guidance that came out at 11 o'clock every Friday night, making the decisions. That was very much kind of our role. But I certainly know as a manager myself that I was kind of the one giving out the instructions. I was trying to give the kind of sort of reassurance, but, you know, do I really know how my sort of staff felt? And I think it's important tonight that we're not just talking about carers. We are including domestics, laundry assistants, kitchen assistants, all of those who work, you know, for, let's be perfectly honest, minimum wage or only just a bit in the whole of, you know, health and social care. So say going back to last March, April, May, when we knew nothing, like you said, we had no PPE, we were not recognised. What did it feel like going to work every day, Jess?
Scary, to be honest, very scary. And at times, you know, it was extremely daunting, because you didn't know what you're going into. But in hindsight, looking back now, we did everything we could to protect both our residents and our staff. And we are very lucky that we've got a fantastic management system at Casford, and they did everything they could to put into place, not just to protect the residents, but protect the staff. And we are so grateful that we've got that, because if we didn't have that, then things could have been a very different story, you know?
Yeah, it was, and I think that I remember back in the early days when basically any resident who had a temperature, a cough, you know, was a little bit chesty, you know, all of a sudden we were barrier nursing them, and we had absolutely no idea kind of what was going on. So, I mean, you know, Mark spoke in the past weeks how, you know, we all know now that Mark made that very, very difficult decision to, you know, move away from his wife and 3 children for an entire year. But how did you feel going back home? You know, we know that you've got 2 children, Jess. So how did you feel going back home to your family when you'd had such close contact with, you know, dementia residents who don't know how to self-isolate, can't particularly do that? How did that feel?
Well, to be honest, the last year it's been so difficult. And I found personally that it affected my mental health a lot. Like my children, I've got 2 children, 11 and 5, and they're key worker children. So when I was at work, my children would go to school. And then on my days off, I would still have to be homeschooling my children. And it was hell because there was no downtime whatsoever. And it was physically and mentally draining. And you're trying to keep going all the time, and it's really, really hard. Having all the worries and concerns of going off COVID, plus everything going on at home. Besides all that, at work, our management team just kept on doing the very best at all times to put everything in place to protect the staff, to make sure that everything's there for the well-being and for the emotional support. You know, we always made sure at work that we had excellent PPE. We never ever were short. You know, we made sure that there was always plenty of LFDs available that we've got. We have fantastic availability for PCRs. Like our PCR, we had to do it every single Wednesday at work for all our staff, not just the ones that obviously are high risk to the residents. Everyone gets it. And it's advertised every single week. So make sure that no one's forgetting. We've always got amazing sanitizer around the house. We're never ever short. We've got great hand gel all around the house. And we've also got, especially throughout lockdown, we had wellbeing support on a Friday night. So like what we're doing now on Zoom, you know, but we had a wellbeing check-in because who knows what's going on in people's lives, you know, and you need to be there for people. And if you're not there for people now, then what are you going to do, you know?
Yeah.
And I know from talking to Ben, the procedures you had at Castleford were amazing and managed to say throughout the pandemic. And forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but you've remained COVID-free.
That's correct.
I mean, I just need to clap that as well.
How better can we get than that, you know? We can't get any better than that.
Exactly. Now, Donna, you brought up an interesting point about people working for a living wage or just above. Now, that's obviously everyone over 23, 25, whatever it is now. There are people who are only working for under the national living wage as well.
Yeah.
Funding is never going to be the complete answer, but what can we do to recognise people further? Caroline, I don't know whether you've got any input or anything that you can suggest here about how we can really recognise the social care sector.
Yeah, sure. Well, it obviously pays really importantly. You know, let's be honest. You know, how much you get paid does make a huge difference, but there's more to it than that, isn't it? So I think the fact that there isn't an agreed career structure really within social care. So that there's some really talented people who work in social care, but where do you go? You know, how do you progress? Or is it you become a supervisor and then you're not on the front line anymore? Some really, you know, how do we help recognise the really talented people in social care and give them an incentive to stay and to be sharing their skills? So I think there's something about that, which is what you find in lots of other jobs and professions. And then there's also the fact, really, I don't know what you think about this, guys, or indeed other people. There's the fact that there's no formal registration of the social care workforce, and I know not everybody likes that idea, but I think it's something certainly we at AGK think might be a really good idea. And who knows what's going to happen about mandatory vaccination? Whether actually people who work in care homes are going to be required to have the jab, but if they are, then how on earth would you know actually, unless you've got a list of who everybody is who works in social care? And I think from the point of view of people who are looking for care, and particularly perhaps if they're buying their own care, it would be real reassurance to know that people were registered actually. So I think that's and it's not everything, but it would be perhaps the starting point of moving to a much more professionalized approach really within social care, which is I think would support people to do the job that you want to do. And let's be honest, not everybody who works in social care is an angel. I mean, I know a lot about social care from the bottom up, because I've spent, a lot of the last 4.5 years caring for my mum part-time, and supporting her with a package of care, which was bought in, as it were. And I've met some fantastic people along the way, but not everybody's fantastic, just as they're not in every other job either. And so actually, I think, recognizing the people who are great, giving them a platform, paying them more, giving them an incentive to stay. And maybe for the few people who come into care for the wrong reasons, because it's the only job they can get at the moment, actually helping them to decide that's not necessarily the right job for them. I think, we need to get better at social care, and it is all about what you guys do. You are social care. You're so precious and very, very important.
I mean, I completely agree. And I think the registration of social care workers is something that, like you say, will professionalise the sector. It's something that we've all been asking for. Lord knows we all felt like we'd been punched in the gut when Boris Johnson called the sector unskilled. So to finally be recognised professionally, I think would be an amazing deal. It's obviously not all big gestures. There are small gestures that we can do to celebrate and recognise our staff. And I know, Dawn, you recently had a care awards at your care home for your team.
We did. So we made it a big Oscar night, and I asked the staff, the people like district nurses that visit, the doctors, paramedics, to fill out what we called a referral form for really outstanding practice. And everybody filled them out. We had the envelope opening ceremony. Everybody took home a mini Oscar, and that was just amazing. We ordered a buffet. We couldn't really do it as we wanted to do it. We had made big plans for it, but because of the pandemic. But I think that really lifted everybody's spirits, and I know the staff really enjoyed it. And I developed a video as well over the past 14 years that I made everybody watch to see what they had actually achieved, because I think they got to the point where they felt like they were just continuously rolling on, and they weren't ever getting anywhere with guidance and testing and COVID and all the stuff they went through last year. So it was really good to see from the start of the pandemic all the way through to Easter time, everything that they had achieved. And yeah, we're definitely going to do it again, definitely.
Where's my award? I'm just going to say, where's my award? As a regional, you're overseeing multiple franchisees now. What do you think? What do they do to recognise their workforce? What do you suggest to them? How do you lead them in this topic?
I think for me, like Caroline said, pay is a big factor, but I don't think it's the only factor. I think for me, it's really seeing your workforce for who they are and getting to know them on a personal level, as opposed to them just being staff. And I think one thing I always recommend to my franchisees, but to everybody in social care that's managing a team, and even people outside of social care managing, is that you almost need to create that family work life so that people enjoy coming to work. You need to engage with staff so that they feel, we all say we have an open door policy, but do we really have an open door policy? Do staff really feel like they can just knock on that door and come in at any point at the time? Do they feel like they can pick up the phone and really be in there to support people? And I think if you can support people not only with work, but if they've got personal issues, that you can signpost them and touch base with them afterwards, I think that goes a long way. And I think one thing that definitely for me COVID did, and I know for a lot of people, is it's made you reevaluate what's important in your life. And I think a lot of the workforce are going to want to work for companies that will value them, that will see them as a person, not just a commodity. And I really do believe that we will see a lot of shift in carers leaving companies to go to other organisations, whether that's in social care or externally, that can really evidence, whether that's through social media or their websites, of how they can be valued and what's in it for them other than just, pay and work. And I think it comes down to, giving people a work-life balance and giving people rotas. And, I hate the idea of, and I think it's more so in domiciliary, but I think a lot of times in care homes where you get your rota on a Friday night ready for the Monday, nobody can plan a work-life balance with that. In the company I just left, they had their rotas up until Christmas 2022. I was all about making sure they had rotas way in advance, just so that you could plan life, you could plan dentist trips to, see your family. I absolutely hated it when I couldn't plan to see, my friends. And I think a lot of time in social care, you hear a lot of care workers saying that, you know, they lose a lot of friends because they just can't commit to going on a, you know, even on a night out to the cinema, something so basic like that. So yeah, I definitely think going forward, we need to really value staff and understand, you know, what it is that makes them feel valued. And there's not a one size fits all. It's going to be individual to each person.
Exactly. You know, person-centered approaches. I'm starting to not loathe the idea of the word person-centered, but I am very much more leaning towards person-led now. And, you know, the people that we're working with leading their decisions and leading the way forward. So instead of us deciding things for people, it's actually involving them, you know, co-production. It's about shared decision-making. Nice little plug for some future episodes we've got coming up. But this person-centered, this person-led approach isn't just for the people we support, it is for our teams. And we do need to involve them in the aspects of the day-to-day running of the services. Donna, I mean, you're a fantastic manager. How do you manage your amazing team?
Yeah, I think so. Before it is about being a family, isn't it? And I think communication is absolutely key. So, you know, Mark just said there, yes, we can say we've got an open door policy. And I like to think that I'm a very open, very friendly manager, and that anybody, if my door's open, it means you can come in my office. And it might not even be work related. You know, it might be something, nothing whatsoever to do with work, you know, and sometimes you just need to be a sounding board for some people. I think things like what Dawn has said, things like recognition awards. I've got to admit, I've had mixed messages with them in the past. I've done them where they've gone really, really well, and they've, you know, really singled out a person 1 month and they've really been congratulated. I've had some negativity around it where I've had, well, why have I never received one? Why has that person received it, kind of thing. So I've had mixed messages about that, but I think that internal recognition is really, you know, important. And that mental health side of it as well. You know, I mean, my HR manager has just recently done a mental health first aid course. And I've got to admit, when it was first titled, I thought mental health first aid, because you think, you know, sort of first aid is going and giving somebody CPR and whatever. But I think this year has brought to light more than anything that what it means by first aid is that if somebody has got a mental health problem, you know, Jess mentioned there, the effect it had on a mental health, that it's important to talk about it straight away. There's no good bottling up and then saying, well, actually, I started feeling really anxious about this job, or I was really stressed about it a month ago. You know, so it's all that being open and honest. And ultimately, we are a family. I mean, I know that, you know, you actually call your residents your family members, don't you, Adam? You know.
We call them, so sorry, we call ours the people we care for. But yeah.
And that's what it should be. It should be a family. And that family is made up of all the staff, the residents, family members, service users. I hate that name. Clients, I hate that name too, you know, but the relatives as well. It's all one huge integral part. And that communication between everybody is just so important. I do want to bring up funding. I don't think it'll ever change either. I've been doing this for 26 years now. And it's such a shame. I remember, yes, I am old enough to remember Maggie Thatcher in the 1980s saying that she was going to transform health and social care. And here we are kind of 40 years later. And as Adam said at the very beginning, you know, we're still only getting 9 words in the Queen's speech about it. But if we haven't got the funding, we can't give those wages. You know, I mean, I am a one-off home, and I know that 80% of our income goes on staff wages, and we're a not-for-profit charity. So above me as manager, there is nobody takes a wage or anything out of the home. So payroll is a huge, huge amount of money out of the income. So if funding is not going to increase, and that isn't just funding from social services, that's funding from NHS in regard to funded nursing care. I don't know whether, like Dawn, you've particularly noticed over the years, the people who actually qualify for funded nursing care is getting less and less and less. The actual criteria to get it is harder and harder. And as far as continuing healthcare is concerned, that's almost like impossible to get. So something's got to kind of change with the funding. And I mean, I don't know as it will. And I will be really, really, you know, praise the NHS here. We are so lucky in this country that we have got the NHS and that we have got free healthcare at the point where we need it. We are so lucky that we have. But very sadly, when the time comes that you want care, whether that be in a care home or whether you want to be cared for at home with carers, all of a sudden it's means tested. And all of a sudden, it does matter how much money you've got. It doesn't matter what, size house that you've got. And the fact that you want to save some inheritance for your children, all that goes out the window. So there's a huge, massive future that ahead in kind of regards to funding. I mean, going back to you, kind of, Caroline, with sort of Age UK, do you ever see anything changing along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, this is what my job's all about, really. My job is to talk to politicians and people in government and try and pressurise them into doing the right thing for social care and for lots of other things too that really matter to older people. And, I like to think this glass is looking a bit empty at the moment, unfortunately, but let's pretend it's half full. That's how I look at life. And I think there's a chance, it's not, don't know, I'd want to put odds on it, but I think there's a chance that we will see change, and we'll see it announced this year. And that's largely because when he became Prime Minister, Boris Johnson made a promise. You might remember when he went and did his news conference outside Number 10, he said he promised to fix social care once and for all. And that was pretty much 2 years ago now, and he hasn't done it yet. Now, to be fair, the pandemic has more than somewhat got in the way. But nonetheless, you all know, just as I know, it's really important that he steps up now and meets that pledge. So just to let you guys know, we're us lot in the voluntary sector. We're launching a campaign later this week called "Keep Your Promise, Boris." #. Look out!
Hey!
And we're starting off in a quite up-to-date fashion, and we're writing a formal letter. 50 charities are writing to Boris Johnson on Friday, with a news story to go along with it. And obviously, if the news agenda is very busy, we may not get much attention, but that's the start of it. But what we really want to do is to get that hashtag going everywhere over the next few weeks. And then before all Parliament goes on holiday for the summer, we're going to be asking all our supporters to write to their MPs in order to pressure their party, their party leaders, but mainly really the Conservatives, to pressurise Mr. Johnson to actually stand by his pledge. And, the word at the moment is that they are very interested in those issues around funding reform, as they call it, Donna, that you were talking about, like how do you pay for social care? Because they've also made a promise in their manifesto, the Conservatives, that nobody ought to be able to, that's it, it's exactly it, that nobody ought to have to sell their home to pay for care. So they've got another big promise there that they've made. But, we need them to actually get on with it. And we know that the two other areas they're looking at really hard are, I can tell you now, the workforce. They do recognise the importance, I think, now of the social care workforce, so that we can't go on as we are. And also, as you guys have all been saying, more money into the system, because whatever they do, unless there's more money, nothing really is going to change. Not for people working in care, but not for people who need care either, because we know there's just not enough money to go around. So, in the end, it might not happen this year. We've seen what's happened with the money for schools, that the Treasury blocked it in the end because it was too expensive. But the point for us is that Boris made a promise. He made a promise to you, and he made a promise to me and to everybody. And we're going to really hold him to it. So I hope that people who work in care will want to support that campaign too, because there's a lot in it for you, just as there is for all the people that you help every day.
I'm quite excited. I feel like this is a bit of an exclusive for us, keep your promise, Boris.
Publicly, I've talked about it. I've told lots of other people behind the scenes, as it were. But yeah, it's coming. So look, if you are on Twitter, please look out for it, and let's try and get it trending on Friday. And the story we've got alongside it is the fact that since he made his promise, 2 million people have been turned away, having asked for care from their council. So in 2 years, 2 million people applied for care and didn't get it. And of course, some of those people might not have been entitled to it, but I have a horrible feeling, as you all have too, that fair few of them will have done. And it just shows there's just not enough in the system.
But even when they do, Caroline, you mentioned to us, and I think we ought to have a big shout out as well to all those unpaid carers out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because without them, people wouldn't be cared for at home. And I know you mentioned to us, and I'm sure you won't mind us saying that, you helped care, for your parents. Absolutely. And I think we need to understand that, we spoke last week, we had a huge debate about domiciliary care. domiciliary care isn't and never will be 24 hours a day. It never will be. You can perhaps get it as a private package, but boy, I don't even think about how expensive that will be. And families are heavily, heavily relied on, whether it be parents or grandparents. And, I know people who are actually carers within a care home, and then on the days off, they're helping out care for grandparents or parents as well, So there's a huge unpaid care workforce out there that really, need that recognition as well.
And that applies to people visiting care homes, though, as well. We've worked quite heavily with rights residents. I am ambassador for John's campaign. And the idea is, just because someone lives in a care home doesn't mean that their unpaid family carer stops being a carer. I know many people who still do come and help feed their loved ones at dinner times and at meal times, and they're essential for us. We welcome them in. Yes, it helps us. It keeps their relationship of care going. They still feel valued and welcomed. It keeps that relationship with them and the loved one going. But they're also really important in everyday care homes. I want to keep just on the funding just for a second, because I know Dawn wants to come in. Dawn, what's your thoughts on the whole funding situation?
I think one of the things that we've seen over the last year, and especially through the pandemic, is this diligent need for respite care for the carers that have been utterly exhausted, these family carers, through the pandemic. And I'll give you one example, which I've been told I can discuss today by the family member. She was authorised to have 4 days. So this prospective resident, her dad, could come into us for 4 days for a long weekend to give her a break. 4 days is not giving anybody a break.
No.
And when this poor chap comes to us, he's then got to go through PCRs and lateral flows and the care planning process for 4 days. And we're seeing a lot of this where it's incrementing from anything from 2 weeks to a weekend. And they're saying it's because of funding, because they're saying, well, you've got this money in the bank, so we'll pay for 3 or 4 days of it, but you'll top up the rest. And that does put people off. So for 4 days worth of care, that person isn't going to get that break.
No.
But we're seeing this all the time with respite. Yeah. Respite is massive at the moment. We're getting calls, I would say 4 or 5 times a week, asking if we can do a week here or a week there, or 2 weeks in advance of a PCR, or 3 weeks there. And it's heartbreaking when you listen to some of these families and just how exhausted they are. But everything is always down to the funding level, and that funding level determines how long that person has a break for.
And as providers, we have to be honest, we have to be frank about this. We need to make money to be able to pay our teams, to reinvest into our services. And unfortunately, at current local authority rates, they barely scratch wages. So even if someone does move into a home and they're local authority funded, there has to be a third party top up. There just has to be, for us to be able to continue to be viable and to provide that outstanding care. If we all worked for pittance, we wouldn't be able to afford the outstanding training that we want to be able to provide. We wouldn't be able to afford the 5-10p increments that we can put on top of national living wages, which at the moment we can't afford to do. There has to be a real reform on the funding. And just listening to you there, Dawn, just thinking, idea, anyone listening to us, integrated care working is something that was promised at the beginning of this year. Why can't people who we know are going to be in and out of respite, in and out of daycare, have live care plans which are shared between services? Yeah. So that when they do move in, you don't need to do the paperwork. You don't need to put them through that assessment phase. Yes, you can do your own bits when they move in for the minimal stuff, but let's have live care plans which are recognised by nurses, by doctors, by care providers, by community carers, and just make that time a little bit more wholesome for these people. But, logical thinking is a bit lost on some people.
It is. I want to just come back to Jess, because we're kind of talking and we kind of sort of sound like we're pulling sort of social care apart of it and talking about a lot of negatives. But, we've kind of said there that, people who work in health and social care carers aren't particularly recognised. You're not classed as professionals. You're not given the recognition. You're not given the wages. You're not given the, any sort of, you're not on any kind of get any certificates or anything like that. So tell us, Jess, why do you do the job you do? What is it about being a carer? And give us an example of something that you do that makes both you and that resident smile and makes everything worthwhile?
Well, it's quite simple, really. I love doing my job because I love to make a difference to the people that we care for their lives. I love being able to make them smile. We've got one lady at the moment, and I've got really attached to her. And she's this little diddy dot. And at the moment, she's not really eating, she's not really drinking, and she's not really doing anything. But I've spent quite a lot of time with this lady, and I found out that she really loves books. So I spoke to my manager, and I said, do you mind if I go and trawl around the charity shop and find as many books as possible for her and go and get them for her? And he said, if that will make her happy, Jess, do what you like, you know? So I spent my day off searching around the charity shops, and I came in with this bag load of books. And I didn't know where we were going to store them all, to mind, because we didn't have the storage, but that didn't matter. So I sat down with her, I went in her room, and the smile she gave me, I could have broke down in tears. It's what the job's all about, making that resident so happy. And we got her a big magnifying glass and sat there with her, and I was reading it with her, and it was just, it's priceless. Seeing that smile on her face and trying to make a difference to someone's life, that's what it's all about. And being able to support them with the activities that they need assistance with. You can't ask for more than that.
And
Yeah.
And an absolutely fantastic point there, Jess, is by saying that, you become attached to them. Who remembers, hands up, who remembers when people used to say, if you work in care, you can't get attached to the people you support?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's rubbish. We're at the other end of the spectrum now. How can you work with someone without getting attached to them? It's impossible.
Yeah. That goes back to what we were talking about, how you value your workforce, because ultimately, if you ask, every care worker in the United Kingdom, most of them will work in care because of that attachment to the resident, the client, the service user, whatever you want to call them. They'll work for that company because of them. And I think you take that away from somebody, then you demoralise them, you devalue them straight away, and they're more likely to leave the organisation you work for. And I think there's so much key in consistency, definitely for domiciliary, but also for residential care, of allowing those connections to be made. And like Jess just said, one small gesture can go so far, change somebody's, day, week, even their, the rest of their life. She'll probably remember that thought for the rest of her life, Jess.
That's
Completely
what it's all about, and by doing that one small thing, to me, it's nothing, and it's just one small thing, but to her, that was huge. And she was like, why have you spent all this time doing that? I said, because I want to make you happy. And that's what it's all about, seeing those people that we care for happy.
Jess, we need to clone you. We need to clone you and spread you out all over the United Kingdom.
Anybody watching this who is thinking, should I get into social care? Would I be a good fit for social care? If you have the same mentality as Jess, then you'll be an outstanding benefit to the sector. We've got just under 7 minutes left. So Caroline and Jess, I'm going to ask you both separately. People are going to be watching this, hopefully, and we're going to be sharing the heck out of this on Friday with the hashtag, keep your promise, Boris. If you could say one thing to the people watching it, let's imagine Matt Hancock and Helen Whately and Boris and other influential people of power are watching this. What is one thing you would say to them about recognising our social care workforce, Caroline?
Well, I'm really lucky because I get to talk to these people. Actually, anyway. And I suppose what I say to them really is really a reflection of what Jess said, that what I'm interested in, what I'm paid to be interested in and I'm passionate about is good care for older people. And you're only going to get that if you treat the staff well, because it's completely unrealistic to think you'll ever get good care if you're treating your workforce badly. It's a people job. It's all about the people. Sometimes politicians get really excited about things like technology and completely see there's a role for technology. But in the end, a lot of social care is really about relationships. It's people like Jess taking the time to get to know that lady. And that then becomes a relationship that's very special for both of you. And that's very precious. And it's something we don't value enough in our society. And we need to do more to help you, because by helping you, we'll help, in my case, older people, but also, as you rightly said earlier, all those younger people with learning disabilities, people with mental health problems, And also informal carers, you know, families and friends whose lives are much, you know, made so much easier when you guys are doing a great job. So that's the kind of thing that I say to politicians, because I believe it, and it's my job to try and convince them, A, that that's true, and B, that means therefore they need to get on and take action.
Completely agree. Now, I do want to come to Jess, but your camera's frozen, so I'm not entirely sure whether you're still with us. So I'm going to put it to the presenters. Just a couple of words. Recognising social care. What do we want to see from it, Dawn?
Well, can I just have a few more? Because I've got that lovely quote, and I would like to put the carer who I work with, and I think I shared it on Twitter, and I also shared it on our Facebook page, because she said, I'm not just a carer, I have to be a different carer for every single resident I care for, with a different skill or emotion throughout the day, and I have to be able to perform different roles for each individual. And then she looked at me and said, but that's person-centered, right? And I was like, that's amazing. And I just think I would like to just read that quote to him, or pick that carer up and put her in front of him and say, listen to this, because this is a skilled individual. This is a skilled professional carer who requires massive reform in relation to her professionalism in work.
Spot on. I mean, the words are amazing. We need to make a meme out of it. We need to try and use that somehow and celebrate that quote further. Donna.
I like that quote. It was actually one of my kitchen assistants that reminded me of it recently. That quote that is that our residents, they don't live in our workplace, but we work where they live. So we work in their home. These are their home. It is not their fault that they have got these disabilities, physical problems, that they're elderly, that they've got dementia. And these are their homes. And we are privileged to be allowed into their homes to care for them, you know, and this is a 24-hour thing. It isn't a hospital where it's an acute thing. You go in, you go out, that's it. These are people's lives, and we look after them. Apart from the respite care and perhaps a bit of convalescent care, we look after them for the rest of their lives. And I think that's really important, that they need to recognise that these are people living in their home, and we're so privileged to be there to be looking after them.
Spot on. Jess, you're back. I'm so glad you've made it back, because we want to hear from you. What would you want to tell people in regards to celebrating and recognising those working in social care? Did I speak too soon?
Lost her again.
Okay, I'm going to say, if we're going to talk about the workforce and we're going to go back to calling them unskilled, holding someone's hand as they die and providing them those last moments of comfort is a skill. Being able to recognise what people's interests are and what matters to them is a skill. To make what's important to someone important to us is a skill. And I will be damned if you can find another workforce who are so naturally skilled, without the education, without the qualifications and the letters after your name. The people who work in social care are some of the most skilled people you will ever meet. And every single day when I come into work and I stand by my team and they've shown up day in, day out and provided the most outstanding care, I'm in awe. I'm in absolute awe. And we are a skilled workforce. And that's all I'd want to say to them. That's all I'd want to say. Yeah. Mark.
I know, I completely agree with what everybody said. You know, they are completely skilled workforce. You know, it's not just care, is it? You know, you've got carers out there that are gardeners, that are hairdressers, that are cleaners, that, you know, you've got to take into account somebody's mental health, you know, supporting them, you know, with the most, you know, end-of-life care, you know, with intimate care. You know, that's not a job that anybody can do. You've got to remember that everybody that you support, their likes, their dislikes, what makes them happy, what might make them sad, you know, what they did years ago. You know, you've got to get to know everybody on a personal level, and that's not an easy job. And I think, you know, for MPs to say that it's not a skilled profession, I think they need to look at the views on some of the petitions that are calling for care workers to be seen as, you know, skilled workforce and to be recognised as the skilled workers they are. You know, I know there's a campaign going, and I will share the link afterwards, but there's 105,000 signatures on there, you know, and just read through some of those comments, because, you know, if that doesn't open your eyes to see, you know, how skilled they are, I don't know what will.
No, completely agree. Jess, let's take three. Let's finish on one.
I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi keeps cutting out.
Don't you worry about it. That's the problem when you
Stupid technology.
So you get one thing to say to those who lead our country. What is it that you would want to say to them to help recognise social care better?
To basically, you know, treat everyone how you want to expect to treat yourself, really. You know, we're human beings at the end of the day. Treat us how you expect to treat others. You know, it's pretty simple at the end of the day. You come to work, you respect your colleagues, you respect the staff, you respect the people you care for. And the same in the community, the same everywhere.
Perfect. And I don't think any of us could have said that any better. Straight to the point. It is true. Love thy neighbour. Treat everyone how you would expect to be treated themselves. Caroline, Jess, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I know we say this every week. We could talk for ages on these topics, and when we have such wonderful guests join us with such fantastic conversation, I'm sure people would want to hear more from us as well. But alas, the show is at an end. So next week is a bit of a continuation from this week. We have got John Freeman on from CareTech Foundation. Mark, I'm sure you know Jonathan Freeman, and we're talking about Care Home Open. It takes place, someone help me, 28th of June? That
Yeah,
week?
it's end of June, definitely.
Yeah, so it's taking place 28th of June. Jonathan Freeman's going to come on, give us some pointers and tips about how we can celebrate those living in our care and working in our sector as well. And that's the whole point of Care Home Open Week this week. So, you know, be sure to subscribe and catch up with us live next week. But for now, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Jess and Caroline. Anyone got anything
I just want to say thank you for having me, and on behalf of Castleford House and Care Home, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations to you, Caroline.
Yes, congratulations.
And if you need me to go, Caroline, let me know.
And on
He's
that,
not joking.
Serious. I'll pop along for you.
night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us tonight on The Caring View. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and whilst you're here, check out some of the other videos that we've got up online. If you've got something that you think may be interesting for us to discuss, or if you want to guest spot with us, then drop us an email to thecaringview@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook. All the information is down there in the description box. But until then, have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.